The celebration turned out to be quite ordinary, not royal at all. What a spectacle it was, considering this was the fifth marriage of King Henry VIII. Yet his chosen one, the young beauty Catherine Howard, radiated joy regardless. Although she wasn't crowned in a grand ceremony, the ruler of England showered his beloved with dazzling gifts. The newly proclaimed queen changed her dresses daily, velvet gave way to silk, and brocade was adorned with furs. This carefree young woman had no idea that her happiness would be short-lived, nor did she foresee the grim fate that awaited her, similar to that of her cousin and Boleyn. Yes, the second and fifth wives of Bluebeard, Henry VIII, were cousins. Interestingly, the fifth queen shared the same name as the king's first wife. It's hardly surprising. When a monarch marries so frequently, coincidences are bound to happen. Among all of Henry's wives, Catherine Howard stood out for her lightheartedness, bordering on frivolity, her good-naturedness, her lack of deep religious fervor, and her almost childlike innocence. She behaved like a delightful child, and in her presence, Henry found solace. At the time of their wedding, the king was nearing 50, while his bride was only 17. Catherine, though not a princess, hailed from a noble English family. Her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, held a solid position at court. Even the clouds looming over the Boleyns did not hinder the prosperity of this family. Despite their close ties, Elizabeth Howard, Catherine's father's sister, was the mother of Queen Anne. However, while the Howard family's nobility was unquestionable, their financial situation left much to be desired. Catherine's father was the third child among 21. Feeding such a crowd was no easy task. He himself fathered 6 children with his wife, who already had 5 from her first marriage. Adding to this was the father's extravagance. It's no wonder the Howards were always in need and frequently sought help from relatives. To support his children, the perpetually indebted Edmund Howard devised a plan to send them to more prosperous relatives. Thus, at the age of 5, Catherine found herself in the household of the Duchess of Norfolk. Along with her came several siblings who didn't even have a second shirt to wear. Their shoes had holes in them, and the girl's hair was neglected when it came time to wash. At Chesworth House, Catherine was clothed and fed, but little attention was given to her education or upbringing. The lively and cheerful Howard adored dancing, horseback riding, and dogs. These creatures were always kind to her. Since the guardian duchess didn't supervise the girl properly, Catherine soon tasted wine and, at a rather young age, succumbed to the advances of young men. One of her first lovers was her music and dance teacher, Henry Manox. Historians believe that Manox didn't just seduce the girl, he had far-reaching plans to marry the daughter of Lord Howard. However, such a union would not have brought the teacher any substantial benefits, as Catherine had virtually no dowry. At the same time, he was not allowed to enter the aristocratic family, so Manox was shown the door. Another admirer of Catherine was the Duchess's secretary, Francis Dereham. This man also planned to marry the young lady, but their relationship was discovered by Catherine's guardian. The secretary was dismissed, just like the teacher, and the young, flighty girl was placed at court in the entourage of Queen and of Cleves. The charming young woman stood in stark contrast to the Flemish mare, as Henry referred to his wife. His marriage to Anne was remarkably short-lived. The English king simply did not want to see the Cleves princess as his spouse. He instructed his trusted advisors to start searching for another bride, and at that moment, Catherine's uncle realized he could exploit the king's desire to marry a beauty. This was a real opportunity for the Howards and the Norfolks. The young lady was dressed more carefully and shown to Henry more often. The fish was caught on the hook remarkably quickly. Catherine arrived at court in winter, and by early summer, the king had already expressed his desire to marry her. The wedding ceremony was conducted by the London Bishop Bonner, and just a few days later, the newlyweds had to flee the capital due to an outbreak of the plague. For several months, the king and queen traveled to their various castles, and Catherine was basking in happiness. Henry was generous with her, declaring that she was a rose without thorns, and he openly showed his affection. However, such a rise always attracts envy and malice. Moreover, Catherine was careless. She appointed none other than Francis Dereham, the man she had once intended to marry, as her secretary. She allowed Thomas Culpeper, another figure from her past, to pay her attention. Catherine's own enemies joined forces with those of her uncle Norfolk, and they began plotting their strike. The charges against Catherine were serious: a frivolous woman leading a free lifestyle both before and after her marriage. A list of men was provided. It was handed to the king, and Henry VIII broke down in tears. The grown man wept like a child upon learning of his wife's infidelity. Interrogations ensued, involving everyone, including the queen. Catherine stubbornly insisted that she was innocent, that she had been framed, and that there had been no one in her life except the king. Her accomplices proved weaker and confessed to adultery. Witnesses to Catherine's infidelity emerged: friends from the Norfolk household and her ladies-in-waiting. The net was closing in, and the young queen found herself trapped. She had nothing to offer but her own words against the accusations. She was stripped of her royal title. Catherine was then placed in a monastery, where she spent 2.5 months. After that, she was transferred to the Tower. Meanwhile, her husband began to eat almost incessantly as a way to cope with the stress. The weight of the already hefty king increased by nearly a third. Catherine was deliberately taken down the Thames past London Bridge, so she could see the heads of Culpeper and Dereham displayed there. At that moment, the young woman realized her own end was near. The execution was scheduled for 7 in the morning. Henry VIII refused to look his wife in the eye one last time. He was likely already planning his next marriage. The rose without thorns no longer interested him. He erased her from his life and memory, not even conducting a proper investigation into the accusations against her. Historians, novelists, and screenwriters often revisit the story of Catherine Howard. Her rapid rise and even swifter fall continue to raise questions and debates. After all, it remains uncertain whether she was truly guilty of infidelity.